Hello, everyone. Sorry, we're starting a little late tonight. Took a took a little longer to click the buttons tonight than usual. Um, yeah, definitely a tough last couple of days with the KyoAni fire. Definitely that's something that was a rough one. Back in back yesterday, I was depressed pretty much all morning. It was really tough. Fire Force is holding back. Yeah, I can understand that. I'm sure they'll release. It'll get out there. But yeah, so for those who don't know, there was a fire at the main Kyoto Animation Studio building. Arson. Multiple people passed away. I'll do a whole news segment, but it's very sad. They lost 33 people is the last number I heard, and it was just a real tragedy. There's just no way about it. The Prime Minister of Japan actually tweeted about it. It's that big of a deal. So yeah, really tough. I mean, what can you say? Especially something that was deliberate like that. Um, I've heard different stories about why he burned it down, but I haven't heard any confirmation yet. Like from a confirmed news source. It's probably out there. I just haven't found it yet. Um, but yeah, and it's something that I don't think will ever, I don't think there's going to be a rational explanation for it. It's not. It's probably not something that's reasonable, right? It's a tragedy. It's horrible. You think of the spouses, the children, left behind by this. Um, it's really tough. Um, and there were I'm sure there were some great animators involved there that we will never see their work again, and that is it. Um, that I whoever said that, Seth, I think that's overstating things a bit. I think the Aum Shinrikyo attack is pretty bad. Thousands of people injured by that one, affected by that one. Fewer direct deaths, but a lot more injury. And of course, and there was the stabbings, the Akihabara stabbings a couple years ago. Um, I have no idea who the arsonist is, so I'm not going to mention it. But yeah, I won't. But yeah, I'd have a difficult time sort of. I think it's sort of inappropriate for the news to kind of start ranking disasters. Kind of like that's not. That was the Aum Shinrikyo attack, and that was like over 1,000 people were poisoned. Not they didn't all die, but yeah. So it was tough. Um, yeah, yeah. I don't know. Who knows? Yes, Fire Force will still be produced. They'll just delay they'll delay by a week or two of the episodes. This has happened before. When the Great Tohoku earthquake happened, there was an anime that was airing an episode about a flood, and so that was delayed. I think they didn't air it, but they aired the rest of the episode, the rest of the series later. But yeah, it's tough. Definitely tough. So yeah, I'm gonna do my best to make sure this is not a depressing stream the entire time, but it's tough. And yeah, Fire Force is going to Toonami next week, which is just definitely makes sense. Kira Crystal, you asked how I choose the anime I review. I don't really choose in the sense of like planning out a big schedule. It's basically whatever anime I've been watching lately and it caught my eye and then I'm interested in. Sometimes I go back to an anime I watched a long time ago and I think, oh, I want to feature this and talk about it. But I don't really have a, strong, um, I don't have a plan, a big plan for oh, I'm going to review this and then this and then this because it all builds on each other. I'm not that smart. Maybe someday I'll get all this figured out and I'll structure it all that way, but that's not the way I am. Okay. Hey, Matt. Yeah, it's whatever catches my eye. Um, I finished the Eccentric Family fairly recently, and was like, oh, good, that's a fairly recent thing I can talk about. And then somebody had mentioned Witch Hunter Robin a while back, and I was like, that'd be a good one to review. So I reviewed that one, and it's all pretty ad hoc. Hopefully, I'll be finishing some of these 70s anime soon, and I can review those. But those are all longer shows, so I'm curious as to why people are surprised that Fire Force is coming out in America and already has an English dub. I mean, we've had plenty of other shows that did that, right? Um, we're this is not exactly the first anime to get simuldubbed, and it's a high quality show. Mm. Yeah. Oh, Toonami, I gotcha. Yeah, that I hear you on that. The simuldub makes sense. How come Madoka Magica isn't on Toonami or even Sailor Moon Crystal? Um, because Madoka Magica would depress the Toonami audience like crazy. It's also a very short show, so they'd have to they'd be repeating it. That show would be done in 3 weeks. So it's not really ideal for their format. And a Sailor Moon Crystal is probably a really, really expensive license. That is a huge. Sailor Moon is a huge deal. So it's likely that they probably asked about it, but the asking price is too high, I would bet. Also, they've pretty well transitioned away from girl shows. What made Bubblegum Crisis appealing? And we will get to the news. What made Bubblegum Crisis appealing? That's a great question. A couple of different things. One, all female protagonists in an action story, which really hadn't been done before in anime. You'd had things like Dirty Pair and stuff like that, which were two female, but having a whole crew of all female was different. The strong cyberpunk themes, the fact that it was clearly borrowing very strongly from an American source, fairly directly, made it feel kind of relevant and new and interesting. Also, the very high quality of the action and the just the very high budget of that show made it really appealing. And I think just generally, and of course also the music, obviously, capitalizing on the rock and sort of punk feel of the time. It felt very relevant while also doing huge amounts of also being very science fiction, very actiony. So it kind of did a really it was really really a big deal. It was very different. Will Dr. Stone be on Toonami? Probably, sooner or later. Dr. Stone feels ideal for Toonami. Toonami may be waiting on it. One of the issues that Cartoon Network and Toonami has is that they have to be a fairly conservative station because so many kids watch it and so many parents just let them watch Cartoon Network. Basically, they got in trouble for this before. So they don't want to license something that suddenly goes way off the rails, which is why they are slow to, which is why they don't license things like right as they come out, because they want to make sure it doesn't, it's not, halfway in and suddenly, whoa, where are we going here? We're not comfortable with this. So that's the problem there. But yeah, I think Dr. Stone totally makes sense for Toonami. Right up their alley. I'm actually curious to see where Dr. Stone goes, because that is a show that can go very far off the rails if it wants to. Yeah, I think people are going to complain about anything. There's always, someone's always going to be on the tail end. And certainly, I think the other side of that coin is that My Hero Academia doesn't need Toonami to be popular, right? Academia is doing fine, right? It doesn't need a big push. It's definitely one of the big names in anime, these days. It's fine. So I think they're I think Toonami grabbed Academia more because this is a show perfect for us and it's hot and it's popular and it'll fit very well. But I don't think there's any intent on their side to push it real hard, because it's no, this is already there. Yeah, I have not watched more than episode 1 of the current season yet. Oh, we're gonna do that too, by the way. We're gonna do a seasonal anime watching the anime watching team tonight. Yay! So we're gonna be here for a while. And so that's gonna be. But what I've seen of the Mame Sky series, I enjoyed. Nothing too mind blowing, but fun. 22nd anniversary of One Piece. That's cool. Manga or anime? Does any show need Toonami to be popular anymore? It's a good question. Certainly true that Toonami is not the force it used to be in terms of making things kind of mainstream, if you will. But definitely Toonami pushes things bigger. So I think Toonami is sort of next level for a lot of anime, where they were certainly popular before, but more within the otaku community. But when they hit Toonami, suddenly they're that visibility is greatly broadened. Maybe not mainstream, but suddenly a lot of more folks are have their eyeballs on that and check it out. So there are a significant number of otaku that like only watch shows that were on Toonami. You know. Yeah, there are indeed several isekai this season. It's nice that we're now getting to the point with isekai where it's like you can't just do isekai. You there are enough isekai series where now you have to do a twist. There was one a couple of seasons back where a guy comes into an isekai world that like he helped write. He was like a programmer on. It was an MMO, and that was interesting, but like it wasn't enough, and so it kind of faded away. But now we're getting a lot of twists on the isekai formula, which I'm enjoying to see where that goes. A friend of mine is a big isekai fan, and so we were talking about how nice it is to see some evolution of that genre. It'll probably peter out in the next year or two, but I have not seen Vinland Saga yet. I'm actually catching up on my 40 years ago anime project. But I never said I made them good. Never said I made them good. But if you're gonna have one or the other, would you rather have a whole bunch of isekai series that are exactly the same, or have each one have a twist? Right? Yeah, I've not checked out Vinland Saga, but I've heard very good things. Just haven't made it there yet. I'm always kind of intimidated by those huge franchises that have been around for a long time. What was the one with the leopard head guy that came out that got an anime adaptation, and they were like 20 light novels already? I was just like, I can't go. Can't figure it out. I don't know if I want to start with the anime because the anime is that a good place to start? Like, really, the visuals? Yeah, there are a bunch I'm interested in, actually. I posted on the Discord, actually. Let me pull that up real quick and see the ones that kind of really caught my attention. Let's see here. Scrolling back up. Hopefully I'm in the right place. Should be. Maybe it was over here. Where did I post that? I can't find. Oh, there we go. Let's see here. The ones that really leapt out: Fire Force. Let's see. Dr. Stone is interesting. I don't know that I'll keep up with it too much. I'm just not big on shonen, as you all know. Copcraft, I really enjoyed for being a more serious, grounded cop show in a weird fantasy environment. Curious about Isekai Cheat Magician. I like the fact that the protagonists are already friends. The Abandoned Sacred Beasts caught my eye. Curious where that's going. Oh, Maidens in Your Savage Season really sort of turned my head. Obviously, there's a lot of sexual elements to the show, but the fact that it just feels very much like adolescents grappling with sexuality for the first time, really felt good. Yeah, I loved it for my daughter. Just so cute, just absolutely adorable. The big one for me though is Astro Lost in Space. That is probably my top this season. That one that is exactly the kind of show I love. But we will get to that in more detail later. All right, let us do the news. I need to grab something real quick. Forgot to pull in the tech. Where is that? What's Sonandeska? Not familiar with that one. You will probably have to give me a name. Like an English name. There we go. I would not use the cover of anything as an indication of the actual plot, personally. I'd be aware of that. Just as a thought. All right. And welcome back to the anime news for the week ending July 19th, 2019. Starting with a fire broke out in Kyoto Animation's first studio building at around 10:30 a.m. on Thursday morning, leaving 33 confirmed deaths and 35 injuries. It's very sad. The fire is being investigated as an act of arson. A suspect was arrested who was said to have used a gasoline-like liquid to ignite several places in the studio. The connection of the suspect to the studio is still unconfirmed, but the survivors at the scene apparently reported he was not one of their co-workers. So, still coming in on that. I've heard different things from different news sources, so I don't want to confirm or deny. The first studio building is where most of the studio's mainline production took place. All 3 floors were engulfed by the fire, which took nearly 5 hours to put out completely. Yeah, the president of the animation studio stated that they have frequently received anonymous death threats over the past few years, but do not necessarily link them to this attack. Hard to say. Many people have shown their sympathy and support on Twitter, including Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, which is pretty impressive. Fans around the world, along with Crunchyroll, Funimation, and others, are using the hashtag #PrayForKyoAni to express their appreciation for the company and to share favorite memories of the studio. Just absolute tragedy. You know, what can you say? It's incredibly sad. What can you do? Anyway, moving on. Several new anime projects were announced recently, so let's get on with that. The creator and director of Akira announced at his Anime Expo panel last weekend that a new Akira anime project is in the works. The project is still in early development, but the president of Sunrise expressed the intention to adapt all of the manga storyline in the new anime. That's 6 thick volumes. Wit Studio and Studio Trigger both announced original anime to premiere in 2020. The staff of Studio Trigger's new work, entitled BNA Brand New Animal, includes Little Witch Academia director Yo Yoshinari and Kill la Kill writer Kazuki Nakashima. So let's just say most people are quite intrigued by that. Studio Wit's new con-man comedy is entitled The Great Pretender, based on the theme of credit fraud. The newly opened website describes the show as a, quote, Happy and comedic drama between worldly famous swindlers. I know. Avex Pictures is developing a new mixed media franchise about a four-girl virtual rap unit working to advance in their school for aspiring artists. Because, of course, we need more of that. The project Kotodama Shoujo will include an anime adaptation as well as CD singles, web and radio programs, plus I'm sure merchandise out the wazoo. So look forward to that. Meanwhile, in celebration of their 60th anniversary, Weekly Shonen Magazine has launched a Twitter account that will answer submitted questions in the form of single shonen manga panels. Yeah. Fans can direct questions and requests for advice toward the Twitter account entitled Single Panel Advice Box. They will receive a response panel from one of 10 shonen manga, including Fairy Tail, Attack on Titan, and Negima. Technically shonen, I suppose. The Twitter account can be found at Mitsuya Magazine. At Mitsuya Magazine. So, yeah. That won't go poorly. A professor from Tokyo University of the Arts flew a life-sized jet-assisted version of the Mave glider from Miyazaki's Nausicaa: The Valley of the Wind on Wednesday. Yeah, that's a Mave flying. It's amazing. The flight took place at an event of the Experimental Aircraft Association, where creator and pilot Kazuhiko Hachiya also discussed the history of the glider. He's been working on this for a while. It began more than 10 years ago as the Open Sky project. Currently, money is being raised on Indiegogo to fund continued touring of the glider, and it will make another test flight in Wisconsin, which will be revealed exclusively to the crowdfunding backers. And then it'll head to Los Angeles in August for several appearances, and it's going to be kind of interesting. Another test flight as well. So looking forward to that. That's pretty amazing. Don't think there's a whole rocket engine in the back, though. Kazuki Takahashi, creator of Yu-Gi-Oh!, recently apologized for artwork posted on his Instagram containing a political message. Japan's preparing for an election on July 21st for members of its House of Councilors, the upper house of Japan's national diet. The art shows Yu-Gi-Oh!'s Dark Magicians commenting, and I quote, "The current administration is betraying its own country," and, quote, "I really wonder if Japan's future will be okay," end quote, with with Yugi himself holding cards that state, "Let's vote." Takahashi made a separate post on Instagram the next day apologizing for using the characters to make a political statement, but didn't actually remove the original post. So, And to be clear, these characters are owned by more than just him, also like the manga magazine and things like that. So, there are other effects to using that. But anyway. Finally, in some lighter news, Dragon Ball fans at this weekend's San Diego Comic-Con smashed the Guinness World Record for the largest attempted Kamehameha attack. There we go. The move is performed on Wednesday by 786 people, including Goku voice actor Sean Schemmel, which is pretty cool, surpassing the previous record of 250. The event was part of the overall Dragon Ball World Adventure, taking place all weekend at San Diego Comic-Con. That is the news for the week. Thank you for watching, and hope to see you next week. Yep. Oh gosh, that's a line. The problem with that hat is that it tends to press in and makes this line on my forehead, so I look really weird. But yeah, that's the news. So a lot of fun stuff. The whole Kamehameha thing was cute, right? And fun stuff. Yeah, the Yu-Gi-Oh thing's a little weird because using copyrighted characters that are owned by like large media franchises and that you created, but still. That has potential effects on like kids seeing that and assuming that like the characters actually believe that. So it's one of those things you want to be careful about. I'm not saying he did anything wrong, but just I can see why later he was like, not sure if that was the right thing to do. But anyway, so that is that. Oh, can I do? No, I can't. So any other questions before we get into the the thing, which is here somewhere. Where is my thing? The thing is gone. Why is the thing gone? Should be here. It's not there. There it is. Cool. Akira anime series. That's pretty cool. I mean, that's going to be difficult. And the problem is, and we mentioned this before, how do you do that in a way that doesn't like, I mean, everyone's going to compare to the original movie that is just way too big. I mean, the budget of that movie is just way too big to possibly do in TV. So it's just not going to look as good. And folks are going to complain. It's kind of like, well, but it's not going to, you can't get that. You can't get that on TV. Unless you like bankrupt Japan. How many episodes do you think Akira should have? Probably 26. 26 should do it. I mean, it's what? Let's see here. Volume 4 is 400 pages. And Volume 3 is 280 pages, so we'll say 350 per volume times 6. That's what? It's about 2,000 pages of manga. That's a lot of manga to adapt, so I think at least 26. I do not know Vic Mignogna, and I do not know any of the people who are accusing him, and I was not there for any of the accusations, so I have no comment. Akira had the highest budget of any movie made in Japan at that time. Others may have surpassed it since then, but at the time it was the highest budgeted, not just anime, movie ever in Japan. But I'm assuming, I mean, Princess Mononoke may have surpassed that. That was a really expensive movie. Let's see here. Anime movies by budget. Is there a list of highest grossing anime films? Well, highest grossing. What's expensive anime movies with highest budget? Well, this is based on some website. You don't necessarily. Of animated films ever made. Not very helpful. So highest grossing, but again, that's not really what we're asking for. Not seeing an obvious website that dives into that. Who knows? The highest grossing anime film of all time is Spirited Away. Just after Your Name, or just above Your Name. And they are a wide margin from the next one down. But again, that's because Spirited Away got a big American release and a big U.S. release, and so that really pushed up its numbers a lot. And Your Name, I mean, came out in America, but it was certainly not the media blitz that Spirited Away was, relatively speaking. So 361 million for Spirited Away, 358 million for Your Name, and then 235 for Howl's Moving Castle, 201 for Ponyo, and 183 for Stand By Me, Doraemon. Give you a feel for that. All right, let's do this thing. Welcome, welcome. It is time for the Summer 2019 Anime Preview Guide. I sat down and I watched 23 of the new anime coming out this season, first episode only. As usual, the restrictions here are, I've only watched the first episode of all these, so I can't comment on anything beyond that. I'm not watching any season 2s or season 3s, because I figure if you watch season 1, you're going to watch season 2, and you're probably not going to dive in the middle of the third season. Also, no shows like clearly aimed at kindergartners, right? Like that's just not the kind of stuff we're normally into. And that I think is that. And I'm probably going to talk about some of the stuff that happens in that episode because kind of that's how you explain what the show is. So FYI. All right, let's get into this and let us look at the first title, which is, and we're doing this alphabetically, as you might imagine, Are You Lost? on Crunchyroll. This is kind of an odd juxtaposition. It is an anime series about a group of teenage girls who wash up on a deserted island and have to survive. They contain a couple of stereotypes, and so it is both sort of ecchi material of, girls in wet clothing, things along those lines. A lot of that kind of, ecchi stuff, along with a lot of like survival tips and how to survive in the wilderness, things along those lines, combined with some humor with the strange situation they're in and the strangeness of the various personalities in there. I enjoyed it. It's fun. It's a shorter episodes series, I think 12 minutes per episode. It was fun, entertaining. I think if you like the survival stuff, that will keep you going. If you like the ecchi stuff, that will keep you going. And it's just a pleasant sort of a show in that sense. And definitely you know what you're getting into when you're watching the show. So, FYI, kind of fun. Moving on to Arifureta, From Commonplace to World's Strongest. This is a bit difficult because it basically starts pushed forward into the show, and it kind of shows you how the protagonist changes, but it doesn't explain a lot of the backstory, which was there in the main plot. So, like, if you look up this show, you'll find a bunch of the backstory, and not the big plot twist that happens in episode 1. Basic premise: it's an Isekai series. Characters are transported into this fantasy world. The main character has we'll just say a very traumatic experience, which causes him to get just very dark and gritty and, very, very angsty. Just angst all over the place in this show. So it's one of those sorts of series, if you're interested in that kind of a thing. I found it interesting, definitely, and clearly there to appeal more to that shonen audience that wants something a little darker and grimmer than your average shonen series. But a bit of a weird sort of place to start the story, so FYI. Moving on to Astra Lost in Space. This is on Funimation. It is a relatively hard science fiction story about a group of teenagers who all go on a trip into space. There are these regular trips. High schoolers are regularly sent on trips into space as kind of a learning opportunity. And I don't think it's a spoiler to say that things don't go exactly as expected. Like I said, it's a little more hard science fiction. It's a little more serious. It starts off very goofy and light, but it gets more serious as the episode goes on. If you're into shows like, oh gosh, it's kind of hard to describe because it has humor, it has some drama, it has interpersonal conflicts. I'm sure there's some romance is going to evolve, but that hasn't really come out yet in the show. Wide variety of characters and personalities. So very interesting. I'm very interested to see where this one's going to go. Really like what I've seen so far in terms of just kind of appealing to my tastes. But certainly not for everyone. So don't be fooled by the very sort of light shonen aspect of this poster. It's not quite like that at all. A little more serious than that. So interesting to see where that goes, and nice to see something that's a little more, again, sort of hard science fiction, a little more grounded. Something that is certainly not that is Copcraft, also on Funimation, a show set in America, actually, but in America in a world in which a fantasy world is crossing over into it. So as opposed to Isekai, where we're transporting over there, where there's basically a portal to a fantasy world that is more or less permanently on at some point in the world, and folks are kind of dealing with that because now there are elves and fairies in the real world. The main character, the guy you see there, is a cop, and he ends up, I don't think it's a spoiler to indicate that he ends up together with this girl. I'll put it that much. It's kind of fun. It very much feels like, NCIS the anime, but with like fairies and elves. So much more grounded, more gritty, more serious. You see the impacts of a lot of these things that happen. Somebody dies, that's a really bad thing. It's a big deal. But also dealing with the complexities of, you introduce, magic and fairy people and so forth, and suddenly there are all sorts of new markets opening up, and also new opportunities and things taking advantage of that, and kind of dealing with that from a police perspective. So I like this a lot. It's a very interesting premise, and the characters are not quite. I mean, they're clearly archetypes, but they're not complete tropes. So I'm curious to see kind of where it's going with the story. And boy, this show knows how to end an episode one. That is how to do the ending of an episode, just right there. Really, really impressive there. So again, if you're interested in sort of a more like a Witch Hunter Robin kind of a show, maybe, or even like what I've seen of, oh gosh, I'm forgetting it, but again, sort of police procedural, but with fantastic elements to it. Pretty fun. Moving on to The Demon Girl Next Door on High Dive. This is one of the big goofy comedies, screwball comedies of the season. The main character is an everyday teenage girl who comes to find out she wakes up one day to have devil horns and a tail, and discovers that she's actually a devil. She's one of a long line of devils, and this is explained to her shortly thereafter. And so she must now go out and defeat a magical girl and pour her blood on the family's little idol to appease their like demon god, whatever. Of course, there happens to be a magical girl in the same neighborhood, and she's very nice and very straightforward and extraordinarily powerful, while the teenage girl is just there. Oh, hey, Sebastian. Well, the teenage girl is just kind of this normal sort of K-On kind of a girl for the protagonist here, and she's got this magical girl who can stop a bus with one hand. So fun juxtaposition of that kind of thing. Definitely a trope, a trope reversal on the magical girl concept and playing around with magical girl. Definitely seems some Madoka Magica aspects to it too, as well as you can see with the main girl's costume. So really fun thing, a really fun show. I enjoyed this one a lot. But again, it's more aimed at like those otaku that are expecting those who know the tropes enough to laugh at their subversions. Fun, funny show, right? Which sometimes you want that. Moving on to Demon Lord Retry, an anime series in which a man wakes up in an MMO that he has been part of, essentially reincarnated in the body of the character that he played, who is sort of this mafia don kind of a character. And so he goes in and starts, exploring that, and very quickly connects with a young girl. And there starts sort of a quest involving that character. Interesting because it seems to be dealing with personality, with the main character having kind of a rough personality and learning to work the edges off of that roughness, which is fun to see. Unfortunately, there's another anime series with with a very similar premise this season, which I happen to like more. And I saw that one first, so I'm a little biased against that one because I kind of fell in love with the other one. But that is kind of the reality of things. But this is definitely a fun light show. Definitely one of those shows that I think will you need to watch a few episodes to see kind of where it goes, as opposed to more like the premise first episode. But yeah, obviously more light, fun show there. Speaking of, do you love your mom and her 2-hit multi-target attacks? This is another isekai series this season, boy transported to fantasy world, in this case an MMO, except in this case his mom tags along with him, and his mother is rather doting. She uses a diminutive name for him and is constantly asking how he's doing, and it's basically, imagine your mom tagging along where she has no idea how any of this works and just kind of does things and doesn't really doesn't understand. So it's that kind of craziness of trying to deal with your mom, but she's like, she's trying to make this work, right? It's not like she's an evil person or anything, but all of that sort of issues with being an average teenage boy who's a little bit embarrassed of his mother, and now she's trailing along with him all over the place. So looking forward to see where that goes. The first episode did a good job of sort of hitting a middle point between having some comedy, having a little bit of action, doing some world building and kind of exploring things. It was a nicely set up first episode, but still definitely, we really only know a couple of characters in this, and the proof will be when we see the other characters and how that kind of works out. Now moving on to one of the big shows of the season, Dr. Stone. One of the big sort of classic shonen kind of stories. So if you're used to, Dragon Ball, or this definitely felt like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure in sort of art style and approach. Very much that kind of concept. I don't want to say too much here without getting into spoilers. We'll say it's kind of a survivalist anime series and dealing with a world where they're only, you're trying to just survive in this big wilderness. And that's interesting because there's a certain amount of actual elements of survivalism in here, kind of like the show from the beginning. But this is with, shonen heroes who can punch trees and things like that. So it has that excitement going on. And I'm really looking forward to I'm looking forward to seeing where Dr. Stone goes, because I think they're really going to expand out and kind of build on this world in interesting ways. But it's definitely a shonen series, right? Like you're doing a My Hero Academia or, any of that kind of a classic in Naruto, kind of a shonen feel for this series. So if you're not into this, probably not going to appeal to you very much. But if you are, like, this is very much in that vein. Moving on to Ensemble Stars, which is on Funimation. Boy, this is a weird one. This is a show set at a boys' school for idols. So the school literally trains teenage boys to be idols. But there's these, like, unofficial competitions involved because the whole school is actually, like working for the man, and some of the boys are, like, trying to be, like, real singers as opposed to these fake idols. So it's kind of dealing with aspects of idol culture in Japan while also having a lot of weird over-the-top comedy. Not just weird over-the-top comedy, but just classic anime over-the-top comedy. Definitely one of those things where you're going to either bounce right off it or enjoy it. Because it's pretty much all boys. There is a girl who's kind of in the center of it all, so it's very much one of those, reverse harem situations. And it's wacky, which, again, that doesn't appeal to everybody. But you can certainly tell they're going for something very specific with this. It doesn't feel like they're just, throwing 3 tropes into one show and just executing on that. It feels like they're trying to go somewhere with it feels like they're trying to really mix up some different elements into it, and play around with some unusual aspects of this kind of, we're going to be idols kind of a show. So again, we'll see, but interesting. As with a lot of shows this season. Also, Fire Force, as AS in the chat room called Sakuga the Anime. This has almost certainly the biggest animation budget this season, at least episode 1 is. Set in a world where where, let's just say, fires are breaking out a lot, and the main characters fight fire basically with fire. But it is an alternate reality, so there are very different things going on here. This is not simply firefighting. There is a fantastical element to it, as you can see by the nun there on the far side of this. So one of the things I love about Fire Force is that it does do some interesting world building. It is set in this very specific world where there's some anachronisms in there, some modern technology, some older technology, some stuff all throughout, like, 20th century or the 20th century. So it's really interesting seeing a lovely sort of mishmash of different elements. Mishmash is usually a negative word, but a combination, a melange of different elements that all seem to fit together quite well, at least in episode 1. Unfortunately, it's been sort of pushed back given the Kyoto Animation fire, but hopefully we'll be seeing more of that soon in future, because my gosh, does it look gorgeous. And does some nice sort of editing things and pacing things in that first episode to kind of reveal stuff. So gorgeous, gorgeous show. And if you love animation, like, that's where to go. Moving on to Given over on Crunchyroll. Given is a sort of a boys' love manga, I believe, being adapted into an anime. And it's about teenage boys who are learning to sing and basically form a band. So a little bit of that Beck feel, a little bit of that K-On! Feel, but much more realistic, much more sort of real world kind of a situation. Again, more like Beck, but without the weird Frankenstein dog. So it's all these boys sort of, hanging around and forming a band all together. Now, I've heard different things about the original manga and what they're trying to adapt with this. Again, it's one of those things which I think is, one of those things that I think is going to either bounce off of you because you just, a bunch of, guys hanging out, and feeling weird about each other and then singing a lot. Which is not for everyone, but it is it's neat seeing a show that is more grounded, that is more serious like this. I mean, there's comedy in it, but it definitely feels more like, again, so that adolescent situations that you find in real life as opposed to in weird anime situations. Then let's talk about Grand Belm, which is a sort of a quasi magical girl series. Definitely a Madoka Magica esque magical girl series about girls who shift into sort of an alternate reality to have their magical girl fights and then shift back out of it. And so the neat thing is you get this very fantastical world that they're fighting in, but then also they fight in giant robots. So technically a mecha series, although the mecha are very retro, sort of SD Gundam style mecha, which I don't mind. I like that style. The animation in episode 1 was a little hard to follow sometimes because of the just design of those mechas. Sometimes when they're moving around or zooming in real quick, it was difficult to tell kind of what part of it was what. As you can see from that mecha at the top, it can be a little difficult to track sometimes. But high animation quality, variety of different characters in there, and again, definitely has that kind of Madoka Magica vibe. So curious to see where that goes. Don't know if it gets as dark as that show, but cool. And again, cool to see some interesting twists on the premise. Then there's Hensuki. Are you willing to fall in love with a cutie even if she is a pervert? I believe is the full title there, which is a romantic comedy about a young man who falls in love with a girl only to find out she has a pretty significant fetish, and kind of dealing with that. And apparently some of the other girls do too as well that he's surrounded with. On the outside, seem perfectly normal, but they actually have these weird aspects to them. So it's a cute show, very moe, light romantic comedy kind of aspect to it, and then you have that kind of big twist to it, which is not I mean, you can tell from the poster art kind of where that's going. But that element to it. So I'm curious to see where that's going because we don't really get much of that in the first episode. The first episode is more sort of establishing who the characters are, their personalities, and so forth, before you get into that fetish aspect of the show. So we'll see. I don't know. Certainly not the first sort of weird ecchi show I've seen like that. But it could go really, it could either treat that lightly and just have fun with it. It could be kind of a fun exploration of it. It could go way off the deep end, right, and be kind of creepy about it. Who knows? I'm hoping it's actually like like I said, a fun, light exploration of this concept of like, okay, you have a fetish. Okay, we'll see. Speaking of fetishes, how heavy are the dumbbells you lift on Funimation? This is an exercise anime, specifically a weightlifting anime series. And it's basically two things. On the one hand, it's about a couple of teenage girls who decided they want to, lift weights. Well, one of them wants to lift weights. Others are kind of already in it and into weightlifting. And so the main girl, the blonde there, goes to joins a gym and starts learning this. So the fun thing is that there is a lot of like actual practical weightlifting advice in it. Here's how to do squats. Here's how to do this. But then the fun thing is that the main character has not done any of that at all. So you get all of that experience that you get when you first do weightlifting where you're like, this seems easy. Oh my gosh, I'm dead. So they play around with that a lot. But also the black-haired girl you see there is, let's just say, very into muscular guys. So she's, going around this gym and seeing all these muscular guys just panting the entire time. So there's that aspect to it too. One thing I do appreciate that there is that it is very much self-aware of that. Like all the muscular guys are absurdly over muscular, like Mr. Universe, just muscles on muscles on muscles. So yeah, they're having fun with it. I think it's closer to a sport anime. It's more like an exercise anime. Here's how to do exercises with comedy, layered on top of that, basically. But like you learn several weightlifting exercises in that first episode, like explained very clearly to you. So again, more sport than anything else, I would say. And but made entertaining. I was thoroughly entertained. Like I could see watching more of that. And then we've got If It's For My Daughter, I'd Even Defeat a Demon Lord. This is not an isekai series. The main character is an adventurer in a fantasy world, kind of working his way up, and he ends up rescuing a little girl who is out in the woods, and decides to try he considers like sending her to an orphanage, all that kind of stuff, then realizes it's probably not the best place for her, so he decides to basically adopt her, for lack of a better term. So this is very clearly an anime series aimed at Japan's young adult population, telling them that, children are actually cute, so you should have as many of them as you can. In other words, have kids, please. So that's the idea here. The little girl is absolutely adorable, and she will melt your heart immediately. And it's clearly trying to make you feel that little girls are little kids are fun to have around. Partly because of her personality, she's very polite and very all that kind of stuff. So I enjoyed this one a lot. I will probably be watching more of that because it's sweet. It's not trying to do too much with that, but I like it a lot. Isekai Cheat Magician, a little hard to judge. The main characters are a teenage boy and teenage girl who are transported to a fantasy world. And the first episode is basically just them first orienting themselves to that fantasy world. Solid animation budget, interesting characters, but I don't really get a feel for who they are and where the story is going because so much is going on. One thing I do like is the fact that the boy and the girl are childhood friends. They both know each other and they don't have that butting heads thing of childhood friends. They like each other a lot. I don't think there's no romance implied in that first episode, but that could certainly come out sooner or later. So I'm very curious to see kind of where they go with those relationships and the personalities as they explore throughout the show. So yeah, I want to watch more of this to see what it does with its characters and whether that kind of comes together in an interesting way. A little hard to tell from that first episode. Then there's Kochoki over on Funimation. This is an anime series about Oda Nobunaga, the famous warlord who more or less brought Japan together in the 1600s and sort of conquered all of Japan. A famous tactician and strategist. But this is about his early years. And the first episode is about him as a 14-year-old running around and doing crazy things as a 14-year-old. And so this appears to be sort of the early years of this very famous person. Again, a little hard to judge because it's rather shonen in style. Not in the over-the-top fantasy style of like a Dragon Ball Z or a One Punch Man. More in that sense of young teenage boys getting into scrapes and such things. Also a really impressive speech given later on in this anime where I'm like, wow, that's well written. Like that's well thought out in terms of what's going on there. So again, I'm curious about this. I don't know that I'm going to follow it too much, but interesting. Interesting seeing a historical anime series, and it seems to be pretty historical. So if you're interested in kind of sort of early Oda Nobunaga, you'll definitely find something interesting here. And I'm not sure how historically accurate it is, but cool to see history anime, definitely. Magical Senpai. I was like, okay, another Isekai series, maybe a Magical Girl series. No, this is about stage magic. The main character is a boy who gets kind of drawn into a club at school where the main girl loves stage magic, loves doing magic, and is really, really bad at it. So it's that sort of humor there. There is some etchiness to the show, although thus far that's been very light and innocent and goofy. I think it's also a 12-minute episode series, so not clear where it's going to go with that tone and that humor. Very much feels like it's based on a 4-koma manga, so sort of set up punchline, or set up delivery punchline kind of a thing in these very short segments. But I laughed. I thought it was fun. It's cute. Decent animation budget. certainly something that I could see throwing on and just enjoying for a laugh. Then there's O Maidens in Your Savage Season on High Dive. This is probably my big surprise of the season in terms of being very, well, it's basically about teenage girls in a literature club who are reading classics of Japanese literature, many of which have rather explicit sex scenes in them. So they're all like reading aloud in a club room these scenes where it's very clear what's going on, and sometimes like it's couched in flowery language, but it's very clear what the symbols are, and so they just find this very embarrassing, and then start talking to each other, and first they don't want to, and then it's like, well, there's a thing, and they're all teenagers who are starting to actually like explore that aspect of teenage life. So you hear that and you're like, okay, goofy sort of romantic sex comedy kind of a thing. No. It is this, at least the first episode, surprisingly touching, very awkward kind of exploration of that, adolescent, sexuality kind of a thing, where they're all kind of curious about it. And you know how it is when you're that age, and there are times when it's the only thing you can think about. And so it's very much about that thing, but also like they're not diving into bed with everyone all the time, right? That's not how the real world works most of the time. So it's this interesting, very realistic portrayal of adolescents dealing with those hormones, and how real life doesn't let you just explore those as cleanly and as easily as sometimes we want. So really interesting show. Definitely more shoujo. Definitely more grounded and thoughtful. There's some like big comedic moments in the episode. Some slightly over the top stuff, as you can see from the girl on the top. But yeah, really surprising, really neat. Nice to see a show that is a little more subtle and a little more careful in how it does things some of the times. And sometimes it's just ridiculous comedy. Moving over to The Ones Within. I'll be honest, this is one of the shows that kind of like I watched, but it really it doesn't stick in my mind very much. A group of MMO players all get sucked into an MMO where they're all kind of trapped there and have to do various challenges before they can get out. It is very much that. So King's Game, that kind of a concept. Do these things and then you can get out of it, and bad things will happen if you don't. I got to admit, I do not find these things particularly appealing for me, because they're just so difficult to imagine them actually happening. Also doesn't help that there's a very weird character sort of making it all happen. It feels like they're ripping off Danganronpa, frankly. It feels like it's basically Danganronpa light, in a way. So it just didn't really appeal to me very, very much. It does have an interesting cast of characters in the sense of they're diverse. They have different perspectives on things, which I like that. Yeah, it's a death game anime. Although it's not like, one of you gets eliminated every episode or anything like that. But yeah, I don't know. It didn't work for me, but I think that's just because it's not my genre. So again, if you're interested in a sort of death game anime, again, definitely more shonen and more like that. I don't know. Who knows? I try not to make everything about me on these, so it's like, whatever. Then there's Restage Dream Days. 3 guesses what this show is about. Yep, it's an idol dancing and singing anime. But in this case, it's primarily about dancing. At least the first episode, where the main character is various people try to rope her into a dance club, which she is oddly resistant and hesitant to join. And so it's an exploration of why that might be and what's going on. Very cute. Again, if you like the Moe, dancing girls show, it is definitely that in concept. But that first episode put the brakes on it. which is a really interesting way of approaching that kind of a concept. Where it's like, yes, this is a thing, but also not everyone's into it, and they may have like very specific reasons why they're not into it. So, who knows? But if that's your thing, it's going to be your thing. To the Abandoned Sacred Beasts is set during the American Civil War. Not really, but basically. It's, guys in Civil War uniforms with rifles and cannons and all the stuff you would, and, tents and all the stuff you'd expect from like a Civil War battle. And then the monster people show up. It's a very eclectic collection of elements, which I really enjoyed, I gotta admit. It reminds me a bit of the Saga of Tanya the Evil in the sense of being, a bunch of different story elements all working at once. Very dark. I would say more shonen than anything else in the sense of big action sequences, sort of over the top action in a lot of ways, and some really tough stuff that happens in that first episode. I like I said, I think this is one of those shows that combines a lot of things, but is very intentional about what it's doing with those and trying to do something interesting with those elements. So I want to try check out more of this show and see where it goes on that. Definitely the first time I think I've seen an American Civil War set anime, even if it's like a fantastical version of that. Then there's Wasteful Days of High School Girls over on High Dive, which is a slice of life comedy series about teenagers hanging out and, that. So it feels roughly in the tone of, there's been a couple of shows like this recently. There was one that was had no dialogue, which kind of had this premise, kind of Nichijou-esque, although not as screwball comedy, like, so maybe not very much like Nichijou, I don't know. A little Lucky Star, perhaps. I'm trying to think of other like recent anime series that made me feel like this. Partly because they all kind of blend together. I'm having a tough time remembering all of them. But again, if you like schoolgirls hanging out and chatting and the wacky hijinks that kind of ensue from those sorts of things, it is exactly what that is. I found it to be fun, entertaining, and just one of those things where it's fine. It is exactly what it says on the tin, and sometimes that's exactly what you want. It's just something nice and light and fun. So those are all the shows that I caught out this season. I know Vinland Saga people have been talking about. I just have not gotten a chance to see that one yet. But that is the list for this time. So thank you all for watching, and I hope you can find some fun stuff this season. Yeah, it's weird. The Stage Magic anime is very much this very formulaic kind of comedy of set up punchline, but I liked it. And granted, I was big into magic as a kid and teenager, so magic stuff is just that is my stuff. A Wolf Among Us, yeah, sounds about right in terms of overall style and approach, concept. Trying to think of other, but yes, it's very much like NCIS anime with elves, and quite the animation budget. Like, more of that, please, right? But look like Wizard Barristers too, weirdly. Although Wizard Barristers was, I cannot get over the art style of that, because I know that guy's done, and yeah. So a lot of shows I really liked this season. A lot of fun things that were different, or not, or even if they weren't different, they were quality versions of what they were doing, right? Like it felt like they knew what they were trying to make and were very much executing on that concept very carefully, which was nice. We've been going for over an hour now, and my voice is starting to drop. So, what questions do you all have? What else do you want to talk about and discuss? Because it is Friday night. It is time to talk anime. Are there any shows from this season that you're particularly excited about and want to watch? Trying to avoid any, this is a terrible show. Do I still game stream? If so, you should play The Wolf Among Us. I don't because I was gone several weekends, several Sundays, and so I kind of fell off the wagon with the video game stuff. But I'm hoping to get up on that soon. Actually, so this is my stack of things I want to do in the future, sort of my someday projects, if you will. And the very first one there is finish playing already purchased video games. Doesn't mean I'll do that like absolutely next, but it's at the top of the pile, so it will happen hopefully pretty soon. And I want to get back and finish Yakuza. I've got Horizon Zero Dawn that I just played like the first half hour of. I want to play that one of these days. Some other games on there that I'm like, I should finish these, and I'm not that far away. Because video gaming is fun, but it takes time. I actually ended up buying Super Mario Odyssey. I've been playing that off and on over the past month or so. Really, the first Mario game I've played at any length, oddly enough, and enjoying it. I'm not a big platformer guy, but it's definitely an extremely well structured platformer. And not one thing I appreciate is the reason I don't like platformers is because every time I've played one of the big platformers, inevitably it gets to the point where you have to make this very careful jump from here to here that's like pixel perfect, and then do it again and do it again and do it again. And I just don't have the twitch skills for that, and so I just get stuck. And Super Mario Odyssey is not like that. Those challenges exist if you want to do them, but they're not central to kind of progression in the game, by and large. So that's been really nice. But again, streaming Nintendo games is a very, very delicate thing. Yeah, I love Astra. Astra is definitely my top one this season that I want to do. If you've seen Infinite Revias, it feels kind of like that. A little lighter, well, significantly lighter than Revias. Although I don't know, we'll see where it goes. The first like 5-10 minutes of Astra is very light and upbeat and goofy, and then it gets kind of progressively more serious as the episode goes on. Also, one of those things. One of my signals that I'm really impressed with a series is when I get to either the halfway point or the end of an episode, and I think we're already that far along, or I feel like it's only been like 2 minutes, and Astra felt like a movie by the end of the first episode. I felt like we'd seen so much of that story. So Sebastian, and hey, good to see you. Definitely this season, like I said, I would do. I would try. That Isekai one, like the Isekai something. I like that one a lot. If you haven't seen a Grimgar of, wow, my brain is dead tonight. Grimgar of Fantasy and Ash, something in Ash. That's probably my favorite sort of Isekai series. Yeah, probably. Yeah, that Isekai one. What is the name? Isekai Cheap Magician. That's the one. Isekai Cheap Magician. I'm curious to see where they're going with that one. And obviously Slime. Slime is kind of the big Isekai series that everyone seems to like. Even if they don't like Isekai, they like Slime. Because Slime's an interesting twist on it. But yeah, a lot of fun shows. But I'm almost caught up. Actually, I think I am now caught up with the 70s anime, and I will be. I can now move on to that stuff. Hey Sebastian, that is a YouTube thing. Unfortunately, YouTube sometimes decides to be current and sometimes just doesn't. The best thing to do there is to go onto the Discord, and let me see if I can post a link to the Discord. Do I still have the Discord link up? Actually, I can do 1 second. So I unfortunately have the power to post links. So if you go on the Discord, I have a special channel in there for announcements, and you can subscribe to that channel and get an get an alert when I let everyone know that I'm going live or I've gone live. That is the best way of doing that at this point, because YouTube is YouTube. It's its own thing. And there's not a lot of hard science fiction in anime. It's there, but it's not a particularly popular subgenre for a lot of reasons. You know, hard science fiction is tough. It's hard. It's tough to do well. It's tough to do right. So people tend to Grimgar of Fantasy and Ash. I was right. Cool. Love that show. Wish I got a second season. The thing is, one thing I really like about Grimgar is it's one season, 13 episodes, and it has an arc, and it comes to an end. And it's not like you could not have more story after that, but it feels like a very satisfying sort of stopping point for those characters, which I really, really, really liked. Well, then I can't help you there, I'm afraid. YouTube's alerts are just funky. I always like Grimgar because the creators seem to understand like the tabletop gaming experience. Grimgar seems a lot more informed by like tabletop gaming, where it's less abstract. It feels more real because you can really get into your mind, get into your imagination much more deeply at the tabletop. Because that is the thing. All right. I think that's going to do it for us for tonight. Thank you all, as always, for a fun night. Some great discussion, great conversation, as always. And I was wrong last week about the upcoming schedule. Otakon is this coming up week. And unfortunately, I will probably be at Otakon Friday night. So I don't think I'll be able to do the Friday anime stream tomorrow night. If I can, I will try to do a stream at some point over the weekend, maybe Sunday night. We'll see. But if not, we may have to skip until 2 weeks from now, when I will be at Gen Con, and I will try to stream from the hotel room, which is always a dicey proposition. So I'll see what I can do there. In other words, I'll pull up the laptop and I will try to stream, but it may just be weird and grainy and whatever. And Fisher, that is exactly how you're supposed to feel about the Goblins. I believe that show is meant to engender sympathy for trash mobs, basically. One of the key themes of that show, which is one of the reasons I love it. Anyway, thanks all so much. My mouth is clearly dead. Glad you're back, Sebastian. Hope to see you soon. Take care, all. Till next time, watch more anime.